Okay. Yeah, so I'd say in a few sits now, I seem to be getting to a place where um, I'm, aware of my whole body and my breath. The mind seems pretty clean, like a empty sort of house. And then when I notice a hindrance arise, I say, "I see you, Mara," and I take satisfaction in seeing you. And then usually after I say that, I get some pleasant sensations that arise, and then I just keep going.
Okay.
Either another hindrance will then arise immediately afterwards, like I wish there was more, and then it's immediate. It's like, okay, well, I noticed you again, and then I'll just keep sitting, so that's kind of where it's at. Not sure what else to be doing, or I think my intuition is that I feel like I need to maybe be building something up. um,
But
uh,
you are.
okay, well, all right, if what I'm doing is satisfactory, then I guess I'll keep doing it.
Yes.
Okay.
And that so there's 2 points then. One is you recognize that the mind has wandered away. You say, "Aha, I see you, Mara," and then you come back to have a nice, pleasant point in time, and then the hindrances arise again.
Yeah.
That's basically what you were saying. Okay, so the hindrance arising and then they re-arising. That's the 2 points.
Right.
In the first case, the catching of the hindrance and coming into a good state then is uh, the the practice. That's it.
Hmm.
And if we continue to do that over and over again, but as we develop the skill, we want to have, uh, let us say, begin to take control over those thoughts. In the first place, we're beginning to recognize them and change them, but then they go right back to where they were. And so now we begin to develop um, the the quality and the intention that once the mind comes away from the hindrances and gets into a good state, that we
Hmm.
want to maintain that state.
Right.
And the way that we maintain it is by having wholesome thoughts. And the way that we lose it is by having the hindrances of the unwholesome thoughts come back.
Hmm.
Okay. However, um, we're talking now about two different kind of skills that need to be developed. The first skill could be called get happy, and the second skill could call be happy or to
Hmm.
stay happy.
Right.
Okay, so uh, one is going to precede the other over and over again. In other words, the primary thing is to wake up, to see the hindrances and put them to rest. That's the first skill, which is sati and right effort. So, in fact, there's two skills there, bringing about eventually the right attitude that I can do it. But when the hindrances comes right back, that destroys that attitude of I can do this because the hindrances are basically saying, "Oh no, you can't. I'm back." All right. But this is the normal way that the mind works. And so continuing to develop the skill of seeing it, seeing the hindrance, coming out of it, that's a major skill set. but
Mm-hmm.
then staying out of it is going to be a new kind of skill. And this is what we can start talking about today because you're already in the process of developing the skill.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's something kind of interesting, and that is that if you overly develop the skill of being able to maintain it, then that will actually weaken the skill of getting into it. And this is where a lot of kind of advanced meditators get stuck in the sense that while they can put themselves into a nice state, they're not able to do it when they need to the most. But
Mm-hmm.
if we keep practicing this over and over again of seeing the hindrances and then being able to move them aside, then you will be able to start to do that out in the world where another person will present his hindrance for you to enjoy his meal. Is angry. He's inviting you to be angry. If you've already started developing the skill of I see you, Myra, then you can get out of that anger fairly easily.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why that first skill is so important. Is that we need to have sati arise just when we need it the most. I hear a coffee grinder or something.
Not me.
Okay, so we'll just leave it there. So now um, let's start thinking about or start talking about how to sustain this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, in fact, in the collecting together of the jhana factors, so applied and sustained thought is the point. Now, having a mind that can apply and sustain means that now that mind is fit for work. That's the term that Bhikkhu Buddhadasa used a lot, that the mind is fit for work.
Mm-hmm.
Getting the mind into that state, including um, taking deep breaths and getting the mind, let us say, oxygenated and ready for work, now means that we can begin to work on sustaining that
Mm-hmm.
that place. That in fact, one of the suttas it has, uh, and this is only about the first jhana, and that
Mm-hmm.
is to develop the skill to get into the first jhana. That's what we're talking about. And
Mm-hmm.
then developing the skill of being able to maintain that first jhana is the part that we're talking about now. And then the third one is eventually learning how to come out of the first jhana in the correct way. But but normally what will happen is that the student will fall out of the jhana because the hindrances come back. Okay. Um, so basically, coming out of the first jhana, if it's done correctly, means that our awareness becomes quite expansive
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to returning to hindrance. Okay. Which, and in that regard, now we're not necessarily applying the mind to anything, but we're letting it be without having it fall into the level of hindrance. So basically, what a great deal of the teaching is going to be is to help the student figure out what is hindrance and what is not hindrance in the
Mm-hmm.
sense of what what kind of thoughts are worthy of thinking. And that we generally think of that then as two kinds of thoughts, unwholesome thoughts, and that the hindrances would be all of the unwholesome thoughts because the hindrances, in fact, are hindering you being in that good state.
Mm-hmm.
But wholesome thoughts then will be the kind of thoughts that help maintain that state. All right, so now we're beginning to understand that, oh, how we maintain that is with uh, working through now controlling what we feel, controlling the things that we're thinking about. And this is where the real benefit comes in. is to when we begin to manage the thoughts so that we can see the relationship between the thoughts and the feelings. And so kind of on the side, what we're doing is that we're actually learning that we can feel the way that we want to feel, and we're learning that we can think the things that are worth thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And we're no longer thinking about the things that are not worth thinking about. And that possibly the one item on the list that we can look at first off as things that are not worthy of thinking about is the past.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when we say the past, we can use, let us say, the wisdom of the past, and we can use the skills that are developed in the past. But rethinking about old events generally is not worthwhile.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for it is that this is an interesting way of putting it, but this is quite profound if you think about it. As you grow in the Dhamma, as your mind becomes more noble, sounds like a vacuum.
I'd be surprised if you were hearing the wind outside. I don't think.
No, this is definitely a machine. It got loud, it bumped into furniture, that kind of thing. But I don't know where it's coming from. But it's not here. I'm checking something out. In this case, I'm glad the dog is barking. Okay, back to this. The noise is gone and the barking is not gone. But anyway, back to what we were talking about is in the sense of learning how to distinguish what is worthwhile thinking and what is not worthwhile thinking. So, by the way, you don't look like you're looking at the camera. You look like that you're looking off into the distance.
Yeah, it's, my camera's in the bottom left-hand corner of the. I'm looking at the screen. I'm looking at you, but
Okay.
the camera's down here. So
Okay.
now I'm looking at the camera, but then I'm not able to see you. So.
All right, that settles that.
If I turn my head,
no need to do that. But now that I know that you're not looking at a wall poster or something.
no.
All right. So we understand then that as we grow and mature in the Dhamma, as the mind becomes noble, our standards become higher and higher. Mm. But in the past, we weren't watching so much, and so the standards were not so high. And so what's there waiting and lurking in the past is all of your old bad behavior that if you think about that stuff, it's going to be painful. It's going to prevent you from feeling good in the moment. Sorry about that. When unknown and uninvited guests come on the property, it's worth taking a look at to see who it is. Okay, so
good guard dog.
So anyway, staying out of the past is a good practice to start right from the very beginning. That would be the hindrance that we would say, okay, so if the hindrance of thinking about things in the past come up, the first item that comes along then is that we find something that was left undone or that wasn't done properly. Arguments weren't finished because we didn't win the argument, and that kind of stuff will come up. In that regard, now we begin to have thoughts about planning for the future, which means fixing the things that we're thinking about in the past. All right. Now, here's one of the things that generally happens with people is that they're not understanding that feelings and thoughts work together. That when the mind, let us say, begins to be free from unwholesome thoughts, that's when we begin to uncover unwholesome feelings that have probably been there all along. But what happens with unwholesome feelings is that we, instead of recognizing and seeing those feelings directly, we start to have thoughts. And the thoughts have to do with how can I get rid of this feeling? But all of that is unconscious. So the example would be that the old goat herder was in his hovel long, long ago, thousands of years ago, and he's laying in his hovel of a bed, and he begins to feel uncomfortable. He begins to feel unsure. He becomes anxious. And so then he starts to have the thoughts of what's wrong. And so he has the thought, oh, I know what's wrong is that the fence needs to be repaired or the stone wall, if I don't repair the stone wall, then wolves can get in and the goats can get out. So in the middle of the night, he comes out and he repairs his wall. Then he goes back into the hut, all satisfied that he's done it. He lays back down again, and guess what? The anxiety returns. What he thought it was not the issue. So all that he did about now, it might have been a good idea to do the wall, but the wall building did not relieve the anxiety. That the anxiety was there out of its old set of habits. Right? If we can understand that, then we can see that there's a connection between the habits and the thoughts. That sometimes the feelings and the habit of the feelings drive the new thoughts. And sometimes these new thoughts will bring up old feelings. So staying out of the past is the first thing that we do. And then by staying out of the past, we will often stay out of the future. These are then two of the major issues of the hindrances that prevent us basically from being in the present moment is the past and the future. So if we're out of the past and not having any future, then basically the only thing that is left and is worthwhile is what's going on right now. And so this is basically what the practice is really all about, is how can we maintain this present moment? And the answer to that is, well, if our thoughts are about the now, if the thoughts are about, and when I say the now, I'm not talking about this particular second or this particular minute, but the things that are happening right now sometimes are very, very large in their scope. An example of that would be when we begin to think about the Eightfold Noble Path. You see, the Eightfold Noble Path has been around so long, probably really longer than 2,500 years ago, because the Buddha says he merely discovered it. But the point is, or the important point is that it's noble. And what we mean by noble is that it didn't last for a week or a month or a century or two, but it was true in the beginning, it's true in the middle, and it continues to be true right along. That there is something that needs to be paid attention to because it's always happening, it's always there. And that's what we mean by these noble truths. And so there is always the correct time to start contemplating and thinking about the Four Noble Truths, but it's not really contemplating and thinking about it. It's really discovering or investigating in the sense of this, that, and the other thing over there is suffering. We really want to look at it in the sense of this is dukkha. What I'm doing right now is dukkha. And this is the cause of dukkha. All right, that's an important point, that when we begin to understand the Four Noble Truths, this is the great wisdom that begins to get liberating. Because the first doubt that we have is the doubt about who is responsible for doing this work. This is why children want parents' help putting their clothes on, and we wind up as adults trying to get a God to put our morality on us. Why? Because we have not gotten over that first layer of doubt about who's responsible for this mess called me. Who did this? So it's almost like this. Think about going into your house. You've gotten, you've been out someplace, you come home, and the place is a wreck. It's a big mess. The first question you ask is, who did this? All right? That's almost the first question that's asked. Why? Because we're looking for somebody to clean up the mess that was made. This is, in fact, the victim's position. That another way of doing it is, wow, it doesn't even matter how this happened. It may have been birds or cats or anything that happened, but it's my house and I'm the one who has to clean it up. And so we begin to picking stuff up right away. So this is the way that we begin to look at it, that first layer of doubt is about who can I get to fix me up? Can I join a religion? Can I get salvation with a cracker? How about a spot of wine? Maybe baptism or two. Or saying a phrase, something with Allah in it 3 or 4 times. And so this is the way that people are looking for it, because that's how we behaved when we were children. It's an old habit from our childhood. When we were children, we were dependent upon big people. So as we grow up to be adults, we continue to look for big people. And there's an awful lot of charlatans out there that will come by saying, I'm your big guy. I'll help you. You can, in fact, see that right here in the coronavirus thing, where the preachers are wanting to keep the churches open because they know that people are hurting. And if they can get them into the churches, it doesn't matter whether they catch coronavirus 19 there or not, so long as they keep paying customers. Okay, so this is the really interesting thing is that there's no possible way for the government to bail out the churches. That's not going to happen. Business, yeah, that'll happen, or maybe even a few people here and there. But bailing out the churches is not going to be. So what we're really looking at is all of the businesses that are set up, not just churches, but all kinds of businesses that cater to the delusion that I need something in order to feel good. I need a savior. I need someone to help me with my mess. In fact, one of the companies that makes a huge profit off of this is Harley Davidson. An awful lot of Harley Davidsons are sold with the promise that you'll get satisfaction. And yet most of those Harley Davidsons get sold cheap within a year or two because the Harley itself didn't bring satisfaction. It brought only the hope of satisfaction. Okay. So in that regard, we're working with this first layer of doubt is to turn that around and recognize only I can solve this problem. Only I can do it. That's what the practice of meditation, and if we use the word meditation or anapanasati, the practice then is to develop the skills we need so that, in fact, we can clean up our own mess. Well, actually, when we bring the mind out of hindrance, that's the spot right there where we're, cleaning up a little bit. That was at least a sock off the floor. And so by doing that, changing that point of doubt about who can I get to fix my life for me is one of the major differences between all the religions, even Buddhism religion, and the actual Dhamma. The supramundane Dhamma is to come out of the world because we're looking for the world to solve our problems for us, something in the world. okay, a politician or a church or a business or a God or whatever. In fact, I normally put it in 4 groups that we call the GREB: government, religion, education, and business.
Mm.
And those things are the ones who set the rules, and they're also the ones that people go to solve their problems. But the real way to solve the problem is look at it directly. I'm responsible for this problem. Okay. When we do that, that's a major shift in attitude. It's almost a shift halfway between loser and winner.
Mm-hmm.
To come out of I'm no longer the victim who needs help, to come out of my problem. I can do it myself. Maybe. That comes the second doubt. And this is also part of what we've been working with directly, but I'll let you know now that this is what we're doing is that second doubt is the question, am I up to the task? Can I do it? Because most people have already decided they can't do it. That's why they're out looking for help outside.
Mm-hmm.
But once we recognize help ain't going to come from the outside, now the question is arising, well, if I can't get help to do this, can I do it on my own? And so this is actually where we're beginning to build confidence.
Mm-hmm.
The word is shraddha, to build the confidence. I can do this. I can do this. And that how we build that confidence is right along with, in fact, this confidence is a skill that is tightly associated with sati. When we remember and then clean out the mind, now we're building confidence. I can continue to do that over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really important point. And so this also is the skill that we develop when we begin to sustain. I can do this. I can keep this state going. That the hindrances, I got rid of the hindrances long enough to get out of this state. I can stay out of the hindrances long enough to enjoy this state
Mm-hmm.
and just be here. Okay, so this is basically where we're going to, but this requires building of confidence. This is why it's a practice. Kind of like learning to play the piano. Nobody learns to play the piano without actually practicing the piano. That's an important point. And so that's in fact what we mean then by, if we're going to practice being in a state of satisfaction, then we cannot be in a state of dissatisfaction, hoping that the satisfaction will come. We have to intentionally put ourselves into a state of satisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
And if we do that with basically talking ourselves into it by seeing the way things actually are, that in fact things right now are quite nice. With everybody in seclusion, things are really nice. And yet a lot of people are not enjoying their seclusion. They call it isolation, and they feel cold rather than being alone and without being lonely. They're just merely alone. And in that regard, now we have the time and the opportunity to enjoy this present moment. Let it last for a couple of weeks or a month or 2 months or ever how long the place this thing lasts. But this is a way beginning to look at it is that we can get ourselves into a really good state and we maintain it. But in the process of can we do it, there's a milestone in there, and the milestone actually is basically the first step of the path. The first step of the path is the student has the knowledge that no matter what the obstruction, no matter what the hindrance, no matter what the state of the situation is, that the student can bring himself out of that hindrance, out of that obstruction, and be here in the present moment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is not just a skill to be developed. It is a deep knowledge of can do. I can do this. That's when we have let's say, the beginning of right attitude. The right attitude of a winner, the right attitude of a lion, the right attitude of can do. And that this attitude is also wrapped up with a feeling, and that feeling is very, very good. It's a feeling of success. I can do this. And that feeling of success then is what helps uh, build up and maintain the feeling of satisfaction. An example of that is two fighters are in a contest. The loser feels satisfied and grateful that the fight is over, but it's the winner who feels real satisfaction. His satisfaction is higher because not only is he out of the fight, but he won the fight. And so this is where satisfaction is dependent upon success. And we need to build up that success, that feeling of success, till we get to the point that we say to ourselves, it don't matter how messed up my mind is or gets, I can clean it out. I can come back. I can come back to a happy state. This is actually quite an important point in time, because that's actually then fairly much the eradication of that second kind of doubt.
Mm.
The doubt that arises is, first off, who can I get to help me? We recognize that's not going to happen, so now I have to do it myself. When we know that we can do it, it's then expressed as, no matter how obstructed the mind gets, I can clean it out. Now, this point that is being made here is the point that the Buddha says this is the first knowledge. This is the first step on the noble path. This step. The vacuum cleaner just started up again. This first step is super mundane because it's not worldly. It's noble. It's a factor of the path, and it's not shared by ordinary people. This is something that's not shared by ordinary people. This is something that's noble. Most people, in fact, they don't have it. This is actually quite an accomplishment. Most people are still out looking for help.
Mm.
But not only have we gotten over, I have to help myself, but I can help myself.
Mm-hmm.
So this is an important point along the path. This is the first knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And you can also go so far as to say that this is when the student is capable of creating that mental state of satisfaction, but he hasn't quite yet learned to control it, but he can keep bringing it back, no matter what, no matter how many times that hindrance comes back. I can throw it right back out again.
Mm-hmm.
That's the place where we come to that leads us into then the full control of the first jhana, and that's when we learn to sustain it. And that sustaining it is where language of the Dhamma comes in, like the guarding the breath or guarding the mind, in the sense of we're not going to let anything come into the mind that's going to bring us out of a state of satisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
There's another way of looking at this also, that when the mind is in hindrance, when it's caught in hindrance, when we're in hindrance, it's hard to see those hindrances as dukkha. They're just what we would call junk thoughts or ordinary mind. But once we're able to get out of that and into the state of satisfaction, now when the hindrances arrive, we can see them as they really are.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what that means, like that when we're living in a house and we're staying in that house is on fire in another room, it's hard to see the house is on fire. But if we get out of the house,
Mm-hmm.
now we can see the house is on fire.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is a way of seeing it like that. Is that the hindrances don't look like hindrances. They don't look like dukkha. They don't look so dissatisfying. until we're already now in a state of satisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
So once we're in a state of satisfaction, we can say, whoa, I'm not going there, because if I go there, if I go back into that house, that's dangerous. I'll lose my satisfaction. So this is the way that we begin to practice that way. So now what we're doing is that we're making a choice about what we're going to think. Until we woke up like that, we really didn't have the choice. The waking up was now beginning to have the choice. But once we've gotten that choice going, we have to maintain that choice, because new stuff is going to be happening all the time. And so we're going to bring it to the point then that we can sustain this by being on guard. We're going to guard the mind to make sure that it's in a wholesome, happy state, and anything that comes to disturb it is not going to be allowed. So, in that regard, we're breaking things into what is wholesome and what is not wholesome. What is not wholesome will pull us out of that state. That's so weird. That noise is back again. Now it's gone. Or it's down to a low level, and now it's gone. That's funny. I don't know what that is. They may have had some new piece of equipment. In fact, the guy that came into the yard to go to the All-Star yard to go to the neighbor's house, they may be operating some equipment that's got some, but I'm not on Wi-Fi, so it couldn't be something that's disturbing the Wi-Fi. Anyway, back to what we were talking about. Um, the wholesome thoughts then is what we're going to start paying attention to. What's worthy of thinking about and what's not worthy of thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
And we automatically now can go back then to the Satipatthana Sutta, because those things are actually listed there. The first item that's on the list is the hindrances.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, to become aware of the hindrances, to look at them, to see what they are. But in this regard, we're throwing them right out. The next thing that we begin to see then are other wholesome things that would be like the Four Noble Truths, the aggregates. This is the kind of stuff that we will be investigating as that which is wholesome to do. Uh, we can look at it like this, that the overall arching point about the teaching of the Buddha is dukkha, dukkha nirodha, dissatisfaction and satisfaction. Now that we've gotten ourselves into a state of satisfaction, we're now paying attention to the things that are worthy of paying attention to. The hindrances not worthy of our attention, but
Mm-hmm.
the things that are worthy of our attention is when a hindrance comes back. This is suffering. I see you, Mara. Mara means that this is, in fact, an unwholesome thing. And so we begin to be dedicated then to keeping the mind in wholesome states. Now, right in the very beginning of the practice, just looking at what's happening around us. And when I say looking, I'm talking about all of the senses: to hear, to feel, to
Mm-hmm.
touch, to experience the posture of the body, to be in touch with our breathing. These are the kind of things that we're going to pay attention to and to think about.
Mm-hmm.
Is this present moment? And then when thoughts of the past or thoughts come up that are different than what's happening right now, that's when we can say, I see you, Mara. That's when we can see that First Noble Truth.
Mm-hmm.
So as we begin to inspect the Four Noble Truths, one of the things that we can see also is that when the mind is not in dukkha, when it is not suffering, then that means that it is free from suffering. So this is, in fact, the third noble truth. So we begin to understand and experience, oh, yeah, this is the third noble truth. We can also put it out as this is cool.
Mm-hmm.
This is what Bhikkhu Buddhadasa then would mean a little nirvana, that we can actually go into a state of little nirvana because we're cool, we're satisfied, and we know that we're in that state of satisfaction. That knowledge that we're in a state of satisfaction, that in fact we can visit this third noble truth, gains even more confidence. So all of this stuff working with the Four Noble Truths really begins to build confidence that we can, in fact, do this. Along with that, and fairly soon after that, when we're spending all of our, let us say, satisfaction moments, investigating the Four Noble Truths in this present moment, then we come to understand a third layer of doubt. Something very noisy is happening. You don't hear me?
No, I hear a low sort of
This is
sound,
taking over.
but
This is so loud. It's taking.
I'm sorry, I don't
I don't
know
know
what
what
it
it is.
is.
Anyway, I don't know if it'll affect the video. But anyway, getting back to what we were talking about, because now it's gone again.
Okay. Is it just when you call me or other students as well?
This is the first time that I've heard it that I remember.
Oh, okay.
Okay. We'll pay attention to this. Have we talked about this before? A noise that comes on. No.
Not the last time we spoke, but the time before that. But that was a few months ago, I think. So.
Okay. I tend to think, yeah, that it might have been with you. But anyway, we don't know what it is yet, but we'll kind of consider it. Getting back then to the concept of working with the Four Noble Truths and paying attention to that and the way that the Four Noble Truths operate in the moment. That's when we begin also now to do a deeper investigation of the second Noble Truth.
Mm.
And that second Noble Truth then would be the five aggregates. And so next time we'll begin to talk about these very wholesome things to start talking and thinking about. But by and large, what it means is that these aggregates, the body, the feelings, consciousness, perception, and all of your memory base, all of the stuff that you've had up until now is not you.
Mm-hmm.
The body is not you. Well, a lot of people think the body is me, and so they want help with that body, and so they go buy cosmetics, they buy fancy clothing, they buy footwear that hurts, but at least it's beautiful, all of that kind of stuff is based upon the identification, I am the body. I am the feelings also is very strong. That's the way I feel. They're arrogant about it, rather than in the sense that when they say that I am my feelings, basically what that means is I'm controlled by my feelings. But once we begin to understand that, wait a minute, I can separate myself from the thoughts and see thoughts as thoughts. I can begin to separate myself from feelings to see I'm not feelings either.
Mm-hmm.
The feelings are feelings, but until I learn to control them, they're not even my feelings. That they're out of control. They control me. That the feelings define who the person is rather than the person choosing to have the feelings that he wants to. And so this is where we begin to understand the quality of no self is because everything that we thought who we were winds up not being because it's not really under our control. An example of that is the body. Jesus even talks about that. You can't change your height one whit. You cannot be old today and young tomorrow and handsome today and ugly tomorrow, depending upon your advantage. We have not that kind of control over the body. And that's difficult for a lot of people to understand because they've been thinking their whole life is, I'm beautiful, I'm a movie star, or I am a walkway beauty model, or a wannabe. And you will find a lot of magazines and advertisement things and whatnot in the media that capitalize upon that delusion. Says, okay, We know you are a body and you feel unbeautiful, but if you put our paint on your face, you will be beautiful. Okay, and so that's that first layer of doubt that we're getting beyond. Beyond that first layer, we're beyond that second layer. Whose fault is this? Is the first one. Can I do it? The answer is yes. Now that we're beginning to, or actually get good at inspecting the Four Noble Truths down through the aggregates, all the way into how the mind functions, we put something else together that can be said something like this: hot diggity dog, this is it. Now, what I mean by that is that we understand finally the teachings of the Buddha and the actual path itself. And we recognize, hey, man, there is no other path of life worth following other than this one. This is the right way to live. This is what is referred to, and this is a good phrase for you to memorize: knowledge and vision of what is and what is not the path. Knowledge and vision of what is and is not the path. You see, what is not the path is the path that everybody is on already that's not getting them where they want to go. But the Buddha's path is the path that does. And so we have to make sure that we know what the path is and what it's not. And what it's not is the world. So when we recognize that all of the rights, rules, regulations, stereotypes, culture, expectations, even days of the week and naming of the months of the year are all part of this package that we have as it's instinctual. We build it up as this is the way that we should live. It has the qualities of herd mentality that we have to go along to get along. So this is actually a fetter that prevents us from seeing what is the path. This is what's not the path. What is not the path is every lie you've ever been told. That's not the path. What is not the path is every religion you've heard of. What is not the path is the path of greed and money and business. That's not the path. Okay, so religion is not the path. Business is not the path. Education, in a way, is not the path. And certainly government is not the path. And all of the rules and regulations that a government or a religion or a business or an educational institution can come up with. And Pink Floyd knows all about British education. You know that song?
Yeah, we don't know.
Your education. Yeah, the song is another brick in the wall. Every student is just another brick in a wall. And that wall then that's built is not me for any of the people who are brick in the wall. So what we have to do is stop being a brick in that wall. We've got a different path. Or if we can invite Danny into this, we're listening to a different drummer. we create our own reality because we recognize that that's what I've been doing wrongly all my life. Now I'm going to create a reality that's wholesome, valuable, and useful. So now we've dealt with all three doubts. The doubt of who made this mess, the doubt of am I up to it, and now the third doubt, do I have all the skills I need? The answer is yes. We now know the path. And so this is what we're doing with the mind when we start to investigate the Dhamma. This is the kind of thoughts that are worthwhile having. So now, how do we sustain that state of satisfaction is because we're going to let only wholesome thoughts, including thoughts about this present moment associated with the Eightfold Noble Path, so we can say, oh, this is no suffering. This is Nirodha. Or this is Nibbana. I got it now. I understand. Okay, so these are the ways that we begin to work so that we maintain and sustain that wholesome mindset. We keep that first jhana going. We make it perpetuate. And in that way, we're gaining the skill in coming into that jhana and maintaining it. And so this is the way that we maintain it, is whenever unwholesome thoughts come in, we can say, aha, I caught you, out you go. And I'm going to pay attention. And then not only that, but I'm going to take a little, how do you call it, a bow or a tap dance or a victory lap. Every time we catch that Mara coming back in, we say, out you go, ha ha, I caught you. And so this is the way we begin to sustain that joyful state, that state of satisfaction, that gladdening process then begins to be habit forming. And that's exactly what we wanted to do, is to form the new habit of feeling the way I want to feel rather than feeling the way that I'm in the habit of feeling. And so this is where we go next.
All right, great.
Do you have any questions about this?
No, any suggestions on
I got it.
and any suggestions on changing my sits, or just keep doing what I'm doing?
I would say, yeah, for now.
Okay.
There is more to it than that, but get into the habit of being able to get into a state of satisfaction and then being able to maintain it. This is the quality right now that we're looking for.
So as far as state of satisfaction, it seems to me like there's levels to it. It's not like an either or. It seems more like a spectrum. Does that seem to fit your experience as well?
Yes, except for one thing, and that is that, in fact, you could say use that same quality of spectrum to learning how to play a musical instrument. Sometimes you have a good day and sometimes you don't. But one of the things that we begin to see is that after playing the piano for 30 minutes a day, after a few weeks, you're making progress. You're not at the same place that you were. Okay, so in that sense of satisfaction is the more you practice it, the better you like it. Satisfaction becomes more satisfying. It becomes deeper. And then sometimes it's not so deep, but then it will get even deeper as you continue to practice. So don't worry about how deep it is. The question is it there or not? Because it will deepen with skill and with time all on its own.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. All right.
So while you're in it, if you've got satisfaction, the wrong thing to do is say, this ain't satisfying enough. I want more satisfaction, because what you just did is you just dissed the satisfaction that you did have.
Yeah.
So that would be a hindrance. So don't do that. Be satisfied with the satisfaction you've got.
Yes. Okay, great. All right. I'll keep plugging away. So.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Okay, David. We'll see you later.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Go wash them things.